hearts and our minds to receive your words of understanding, and continue to help us, Father, as we strive to overcome, to be found acceptable before you as a gold, Father. We love you, we thank you, praise you, and we ask these things in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah, Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. Please be seated, men. We are in the book. There is someone out there. This is a really awesome book. It says the facts. Many facts in this book. It's astounding what all is in here. We're going to open up in the, let's go with the forward. It's found right after the, right before the table of contents. There you go. Now that's the dedication. Right after the table of contents. There we go, the forward. Okay, on page E. It says, now this is something that Pastor wrote. He says, congratulations. You have in your possession a book unlike any other. Millions of books have been written and published, but we have yet to find one that contains the knowledge that this book contains. Although this knowledge has been sought after for thousands of years, it has remained elusive to both scientists and scholars who've only discovered some of these things in this generation. There is someone out there that takes up where scientists, astronomers, astrologists, and the world's theologians leave off. Compiled and documented in one volume is absolute, undeniable proof that many beings and creatures inhabit the universe. There is someone out there. One question that's been on people's minds for thousands of years is how the universe came into existence. Could it have been the result of some cosmic explosion? Or could it be that there is some kind of super intelligence in control of both the design and the maintenance of all the moving heavenly bodies? How did the earth and the heavenly bodies that govern it come into existence? How were the billions of stars we see from Earth able to remain so perfectly consistent in their path, day after day, year after year, without ever changing or without ever losing or gaining speed? Not even by 1 second. How do these heavenly bodies continue in their paths without ever colliding with one another, the way our automobiles, trains, and planes collide here on Earth? Could all of this be a coincidence? Or could it be that the universe and everything in it was set in motion and maintained for a reason? How did mankind's existence begin? Why did it begin on Earth? Is there a reason for our existence? What is our existence leading to? Will it ever come to an end? Or are we all living up to our true potential? And what is our true potential? Is man the only being in the universe? Are there other beings more intelligent than we are? If so, who are they? What are they? Where are they? How did their existence begin? And what purpose do they serve? And what do they possess? Man has been trying to find answers to these questions for as long as he has existed. Unable to agree on all the answers, scientists and scholars settle with theories. Theories that in time were almost always proven incorrect. Although the answers have remained elusive to mankind for centuries, they do exist. In fact, you're holding them in your hand. They were written in the pages of this book, along with the clear, concise, absolute, undisputable proof supporting them. And I say again to you, congratulations, you now have in your possession the knowledge mankind has sought for thousands of years and has never before understood. May Yahweh bless your understanding. Love from Yahweh through Yeshua, Yisrayl Hawkins. So that's a nice way to begin the book there. So all those things that he just talked about are going to be shown in this book, as we'll cover this. It's a fascinating book here. Let's start off on chapter 1 here on page 1. There is someone out there. The proof, notice. He says, the greatest clocks in the world vary in time from day to day and have to be reset periodically in order to retain the correct time. The clock used to set these man-made clocks is the great clock found in heaven. It never varies in time, not even by 1 second. This fact alone makes it completely obvious that some kind of super intelligence is in control of the design control, and maintenance of all the moving heavenly bodies. Only a fool could doubt that a superior mind created and set the universe in its invariable motion after seeing the precision that has gone through into the magnificent works of the galaxies. In many instances, the same control can be seen in the instructions and prophecies given in what identifies itself as the inspired scriptures. As undeniable as the fact that 1,000 galaxies in perfect precision must have a designer or controller are the laws and the prophecies of a creator named Yahweh who proves to have inspired them. Now, like you said, it's amazing when you look up at the sky and you see all of those things that's out there in the universe. And to think that all of these things, these galaxies are composed of billions of stars, who knows what the number is. And all of these things are out there, moving around, and there's beings out there. We're not the only ones. That would be really conceited for mankind to even think such a crazy thing, But the thing is, you have to realize that there is a being that's out there. And how can you believe in that being? By the simple fact that we're fixing to cover in just a moment. It's these inspired prophecies that were written that shows that there is a creator. Pastor continues, I know many highly educated men and women will close the book at this moment, thinking that this is just one more silly Christian or Jewish book filled with fairy tales, lies, and pagan god worship. But if you're still reading, then read at least one more paragraph before you close the book. I can prove without any doubt that there is a creator and that he is out there exerting reasonable control of mankind and of Malachim, while at the same time allowing them all to retain free moral agency. See, and that's the thing with Yahweh. He doesn't force anything upon anybody or any being. Everything that he has made goes according to the way that it's supposed to go if the laws are followed. Now it says undeniable proof of a creator does exist. One fact stands out in proving the existence of our creator Yahweh: the undeniable accuracy of the prophecies he inspired to be written in the Holy Scriptures. Undeniable accuracy. It's amazing the way these things are. And when you look at the prophecies and stuff too, and you look at some of the words, that's where you find all the details in those words that are in there. Now, he inspired to be written in the Holy Scriptures. It's a proven fact that no mere human being can foretell the future. No human being has the power or the ability to look into the future and predict what will ever occur the next minute or the next hour, let alone years into the future. And there's thousands of years that we're talking about too, and that's an incredible thing. But there is a being who can and does claim this ability. Now notice, he has that ability and Yahweh claims that ability. And it's his claim only, because only Yahweh can claim to be able to foretell the future. No other being can. And of course you can see the reasoning behind that, because if the gods could do that, it would totally, it'd be such a great deception that, it would keep mankind from ever knowing and finding out about Yahweh. So he puts a limit on things. But there's a being who can and does claim this ability. In fact, Yahweh shows that he alone can accurately declare the things that are sure to come. In Isaiah 46, verse 9 through 11, he says, remember the former things of old, for I am Yahweh, and there is none else. I am Yahweh, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times, those things which were not yet done. In other words, he was foretelling the future there, saying, my counsel will stand, and I will fulfill all my plan. Okay? He counseled his prophets to write these things down, and of course, his plan was fulfilled. Calling an eagle from the east, and the one who executes my plan from a far country. Yes, I have spoken, and I will also bring it to pass. I have purposed, and I will also do it. Remember, Isaiah also says, that Yahweh's word, nothing goes forth from him that returns back to him void, but it accomplishes the thing in which he was sent out to do. Now, Yahweh's prophecies, they're proven to be 100% true and accurate in every detail. Now, pastor's laying down groundwork here for you to realize that, to start off with, there is someone out there. You have to believe in Yahweh. And you remember it says in Hebrews, it says, he who believes in Yahweh, you have to believe that he exists and he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Because if you don't believe in a creator, there's no way that you can have salvation or even have a life, really. The life is not yours. Someone else owns you. Now, Yahweh's prophecies are proved to be 100% true and correct. Accurate. Very accurate in every detail. And Yahweh inspired his prophets to foretell many events, often thousands of years in advance, and all of them have come to pass, exactly as Yahweh said that they would. And we'll examine just a few of these prophecies and show their fulfillment as recorded by historians. But he says again, no human being has the power to accurately foretell future events. So then, if we find that the prophecies written in the Holy Scriptures were actually foretold the future accurately and consistently, then we have proven that they were inspired by a source higher than mankind, just as Yahweh did. Okay, just as Yahweh said that he is. I am Yahweh. Okay? So if you can prove that, then you can prove there's a creator, because he speaks to us through prophecy, and that's how he reveals himself. Proof is found in the prophecies of the four world-ruling kingdoms. Now, under the inspiration of Yahweh, the prophet Daniel foretold of 4 world-ruling kingdoms, beginning with his time, during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, up to this very day. And it's a historical fact that from Daniel's day until now, there have only been 4 world-ruling kingdoms or empires. No more. Only 4. Now, Daniel spoke of these empires as being beasts. And you read here in Daniel 7, 2-3, Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heaven broke out against the great sea. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the others. Now we know from Revelations the sea is talking about the multitudes and so forth. Now in Daniel, you drop down in Daniel 7, drop down to verse 15, he says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the visions that passed through my mind troubled me. Because he was wondering, what does this mean? And he was shown. I came near as one of those who stood by and asked him the truth of all this, and he told me and revealed the interpretation of these things to me. These great beasts, which are 4, are 4 kings which will arise out of the earth. Okay, so he tells you these 4 beasts are 4 kings or 4 powers, kingdoms. So these 4 world-ruling kings or empires, they're described to us in the prophecies, just as Daniel continued to write in Daniel chapter 7, verse 4. The first one was Babylon. He says, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Okay? Eagle's wings. The eagle symbolizes the, I get a book of Yahweh? I forgot to bring my book. The eagle's wings. Okay, he says, I beheld until his wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand upon the feet like a man. And a man's heart was given to him. In other words, he was brought down low. The eagle's wings refers to the fact that he was lifted up. He lifted himself up high. You know, when an eagle makes its nest very, very high as it possibly can. It likes very high heights. And it shows the fact that he was lifted himself up, this king. And he was brought down low. In Daniel 7 verse 5, the next one was Medo-Persian. He says, and then behold, after this beast now, after this lion that had eagle's wings, then he beheld another beast, the second, that was like a bear. And it raised itself up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and they said to it, arise and devour much flesh. Okay, so this shows the fact that, the bear, being the mighty creature that it is, it goes out and it attacks and it can destroy many. So it shows the brute power of it. In Daniel 7, verse 6, the next one was the Greek Empire. And after this I beheld, and yet another like a leopard. Okay, a leopard is a swift animal, and that's exactly what took place here. I saw another like a leopard, which had 4 wings like a fowl upon its back, and the beast also had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. And the Greeks took Alexander the Great, if you remember, took over, and he had the Greek Empire. These 4 heads were the 4 generals that after his death, the kingdom broke up and it was divided up amongst the 4 generals as they all vied for power and authority at that time. They all wanted that power, and of course they all went after it. Let me see if I can find something real quick here. And that's the thing, is that Yahweh's prophecies are just so packed with stuff. In about the eagle's wings, I was just going to read something here in Obadiah 1 verse 4. It says, though you exalt yourself as high as the eagle, and though you set your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, says Yahweh. Okay, and then that's what I said. He was brought down, like it says in Daniel 7:4. He was had eagle's wings, and then he was made to stand upon his feet like a man. He was brought down eventually. And then about the bear in Daniel 7. In Proverbs 28. Let's see. Proverbs 28. Proverbs 28 verse, I think it's 15, I think. It says, like a roaring lion and a charging bear is a wicked ruler over a poor people. And that's exactly what they did. They oppressed the people, you know. All they wanted, they were vying for power and for money. You got to remember all the things that we were taught. You know, they were raised up. Somebody got an idea that they wanted to become a king, so they revolted and got together a following, and before you know it, they had another king set up, and they fought against one another. Now, in Daniel 7:7, the last one is the Roman Empire. It says, after this I saw in the night vision, behold, a 4th beast. So there was 3 before, this is the 4th one. He's dreadful and terrible, and exceedingly strong, and it had a great iron teeth. Those iron teeth is the fact that this was a war machinery. And it devoured and broke in pieces, and he trampled the residue with his feet. And it was different from all the other beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So the accuracy of these prophecies is truly amazing, because any history book will verify that these kingdoms became world-ruling empires, just as Daniel was inspired to write. Babylon was the first one. Medo-Persian conquered Egypt, and then they became the second one, and then the 3rd empire was established, and the Greeks conquered the Medo-Persians, and then the Roman Empire became the 4th one and conquered over the Greeks. And it's true to this day. You know, it still has that authority and world-ruling power as well. So surely these few facts here, these are fulfilled prophecies that you've seen taking place here. And history shows this to be true. And that should be enough to prove to any human being the great power and ability and the superiority and the existence of a creator, if they have any sense, you know. But there's still more proof that can be seen when you look at these details about this 4th beast that Daniel saw. When you compare what Daniel saw and what he wrote, we can see that the Roman Empire is the 4th beast that Daniel saw. This same governmental system would be mankind's last world-ruling governmental system. This same governmental system would change the laws of Yahweh and the minds of the people and religions all over the world. And the same governmental system would destroy the temple at a time when it was rebuilt after the Babylonian captivity. And also the same governmental system would be in the last days. They make a 7-year peace agreement that would end in almost total destruction in the whole world. So there's undeniable proof that Yahweh is true, He's real, and these are just a few of the things. But you can see these prophecies, like these prophecies of Rome, has been fulfilled, because Daniel, his prophecy concerning the fourth beast was inspired by Yahweh himself, and he supplies us with even greater proof here, the Creator's existence and his unlimited power to be able to foretell future events. Now remember, no human being has the ability to foretell a future event. And yet, this is total accuracy that he gives us in his word. Even Daniel didn't fully understand the meaning of the prophecies that he was given, but he desired to know, but he wasn't allowed to completely know everything. But we see that, after he died and these things came to pass, history proved and verified that these things are real. And it verified that the Creator Yahweh actually inspired Daniel to write these things thousands of years ago. Now, the last world ruling power. The first thing we see in these prophecies, that fourth beast, is Rome. And we still see this power in the last days. Daniel 7:19-22, he says, "And then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his claws of bronze. When he devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his that were on his head, and of the other horn which came up, before whom 3 fell. That horn had eyes and a mouth that spoke like very great things, whose look was more stout, more mighty and imposing than the others. And I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days and judgment was given to the saints of Yahweh, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdoms." Now, the world we live in today is a continuation of this Roman Empire. It's the same thing. This government that's in control at this time is formed after the Roman system. Okay, the laws, the standards, the ethics we have, the customs that we have, you practice throughout the Christian world today. They've always been the basis from pagan Rome. That's where they get these things from. You got to remember, when the Romans went out, okay, they collected all sorts of God worship, and they brought it all back with them, and they brought it back to Rome. And so, it's a conglomeration. This is why you find in the Christianity all of these different myths and stuff that are all like combined together into one. Now, the Roman Empire, it still holds power over the world today, although not through any military power. It's not a military force of its own, but it does hold power. This is from the World Book Encyclopedia, 1981, volume 16, pages 380 and 394, shows the history of the Roman Empire, and it says, "The Roman Empire, at its height, it included about a fourth of Europe, much of the Middle East, and the entire northern coastal area of Africa. Its millions of people spoke many languages and worshiped different gods." Now you can see, if you're speaking many different languages and worship many different gods, there's going to be complete division amongst all of that. Okay? That's why Christianity came about. Christianity was a means by which to bring the people together in a common religion with one God. But its millions of people and their many languages worship different gods, but they were united by military power and government of the Romans. So they went out, and as long as they paid some tribute to Rome, then they were all right. They were protected. The city of Rome grew from a farming village in central Italy to become the capital of the huge empire. The Roman Empire fell apart more than 1,500 years ago, but it still influences our lives today. Okay? Roman law provided the basis of the law of most European and Latin American nations. The principles that bound the Roman Empire together influenced countless generations. Now, the next article there is the decline and the fall of Rome, which was between 337 and 476. It says another period of great disorder followed Constantine's death in 337. The only living, growing force within the western provinces seemed to be the Christian church. That's what seemed to grow so much. Notice it says a growing force. Okay, the definition of that word force means a powerful effect or influence. Okay, it was a very powerful effect or influence that this religion had. It's also interesting that this word force also means a group of people willing to obey orders. And you see that in the fact that when the Crusades came about, they definitely did go out and obey the orders of the Pope and do the things that they did. Now, the decline and the fall of Rome wasn't the end of this Fourth Roman Empire, okay? It wasn't the end of it that Daniel saw. But under its own military power, this fourth beast never did regain the strength that it had as a world-ruling power. But there's a force that did continue to live on and to grow, and that was the Catholic Church. So even though militarily it lost its power to go out and to conquer in that manner, it still conquered. Remember, to go out, conquer, and to conquer, as it says in Revelations, okay? That was the power that was given into it, that Yahweh allowed this great force to go out and to deceive the world. Now, Compton's Pictured Encyclopedia, it says on volume, this is the 1948 edition, volume 12, page 144. Now let's take a somewhat closer view of the city of Seven Hills. Without doubt, it surpasses all other cities in the world in historical interest. And not only was it the capital of the great empire, which was first brought to a large part of the European law and order, government, and the arts of civilized life. It remained the center of the European life in the Middle Ages. Yes, because you remember the power and influence that it had during that time, the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages. And is today, at once, the capital of the government of modern Italy and the great seat of the papacy, the head of the Roman Catholic Church. Now, reading again from the World Book Encyclopedia, under Roman Catholic Church, you see that it's the largest body of Christians in the world. In fact, the church has more followers than all of the Christian groups combined, and more than any non-Christian religion. At this time of the writing of this, they say 45 million Roman Catholics in the United States, but there's more than that now. And also, population has tremendously increased, which I'll read you in just a moment about something. But it governs the church from the Vatican City, a tiny independent state within the city of Rome. Remember, when it talks about the Vatican City, it is a city. It's not very big. It's only very small. I forgot the exact dimensions of the Vatican, but it's not very big at all. But however, it's a city. Okay, it's an international city that is right there in Rome, and on the street there's a line that goes across, like kind of like cuts in the middle of the street somewhat, and when you step over that line, it shows that you've entered into the country of the Vatican, right? The Vatican City. But it's an independent state all by itself. This is the same thing, you remember, that Revelations talks about. It's the same thing we find here in the United States with the District of Columbia, okay? Washington, D.C. It's an independent district within itself of the United States. It's not a state, but it's an actually independent district right there within the United States, which is a seat of government. Same as the Vatican. Everything's been duplicated. That's why all the buildings look the same, the way that they do. They're magnificent, huge structures and all the columns. Remember all the columns, okay? All those things came from the temples and all that represented the Asherah poles and all that thing. That's why everything is based upon the temples and the gods. And you see all over Washington, D.C. But it says the church operates schools and universities, hospitals, orphanages, and homes for the aged in countries all over the place, all over the world, with large Catholic populations. In a few nations, Catholics have formed strong political parties. And the Roman Catholic Church has been an important force in world history. That's that word force again, okay? In world history. During much of the Middle Ages, for example, the church has had great political power in Western Europe. Remember what Revelation talks about? The beast that came up, okay, out of the earth. That was, talking about that first beast was the Catholic Church, okay? Came out of the sea. Okay, and the church in the New World, it says, in the United States during the 1980s, the American church came of age and Catholics became a powerful political factor, especially in large cities such as Boston, Chicago, and New York. And that's their really big diocese where they set up their seat of power. Now, the Catholic Church in the United States is a part of the worldwide Catholic Church and the Christian Church. Okay, it's the Christian Church that's in full union with the Pope, is the way that they look at it. It has more than 77.7 million registered members right now. If you notice this article, it had 49, so it's increased almost a lot since then. And it's the largest single religious denomination in the United States. And it comprises like 25% of the population of the United States. So 1 out of every 4 people is Catholic, okay? And the United States has the 4th largest Catholic population in the world. Now, the United States itself is divided up, it's divided up into like 32 different regions. They have the map of the United States, and they have divided up into 32 different regions, and this is the different areas of control that the bishops and the archbishops and so forth have in the different parts. Now remember in Revelation 13, 11 through 12, it says, I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. Okay? And remember it says it had 2 horns like a lamb, right? It was like a lamb. In other words, it appeared to be like a lamb, okay? But it wasn't. But it had the appearance like it, okay? In other words, it was playing a hypocrite portion, okay? The part of a hypocrite. Like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon, remember? So it had these 2 horns. These 2 horns are the Catholic and the Protestants, okay? Now, the Protestants are Catholics. They just don't know it, But they consider themselves as being Protestants. They say that they're not in full union with the Pope. And so he's reaching out to them and bringing them back in. But it says in verse 12 that he exercised all the authority of the first beast. Okay? So the second beast, which is the United States, it exercises all the authority of the first beast and caused everybody on earth, it says, those who dwell on earth to worship the first beast. Well, this isn't talking about religion. Okay, it's not like the U.S. goes out and pushes religion on everybody. What does the United States push on everybody? Democracy, exactly. And what is democracy? Freedom of religion, right? It's freedom of religion. You can worship any religion that you want. Okay, so they push this upon the world because they're following what the Pope tells them to do. Okay, and it's exactly what Revelation says. They exercise all the authority of the first beast, and they push this out on everybody in the world. And then they cause them to worship the same. Let's see. Now, he says on verse 6 here, it says, the governmental system of the people and by the people controlling the nations today are simply a continuation of the ancient Roman Empire. Daniel's writings describes this religious influence as horns. Remember? Daniel 7, verse 7 through 8. He says, after this I saw in my night vision, behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and exceedingly strong. And it had great iron teeth. Remember? The war machinery. and it devoured and broke in pieces, and then it trampled the residue with its feet. It just shows you how brutish mankind is. You know, the fact that that's the way that a beast is. You know, it just goes out and destroys and just has no care and consideration for anything. And it was different from all the other beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. In verse 8, and I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in the horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Now the words translated horn and horns are both word number 7162. It comes from 7161 in Strong's, and it shows there it means figuratively power. Okay? Power. Now, it also means a corner of the altar. Remember the 4 horns of the altar, this power that is out there that will bring him down. Now, Gesenius, Hebrew Chaldee Lexicon of the Old Testament by Tregelles on page 744 shows the words to be a symbol of strength and power. So it goes right along with this religious power. All right? Strength and power, or this figuratively, this power that is there. That's what the horn represents. If you remember as well in the, I think it's the 2 Babylons, right? Where they show the wood carving of some men and some women around, and they have these horns on their head coming out, you know, and like the women have something draped over them and stuff, kind of like for decoration, whatever. Well, these horns symbolize their authority and their dignity, you know, their status symbol and so forth. But it also symbolizes the fact of the gods that they worship and stuff. So it shows that this word horn means it's a symbol of strength and power, okay? And remember, the rich rule. They always have. If you have money, you can be influential and you can buy the power. Now, the same governmental system here, remember, as Daniel talks about, changed these laws, okay? And so we know that if they changed the laws that pertain to religious things, they have to be a religious power. Now, I'll go back to something about these horns. Remember in Revelation it says the beast coming out of the earth was like the lamb, had 2 horns, and had exercised all the authority of the first beast. You remember this first beast was this 4th beast that Daniel saw. Okay? This 4th beast was still in authority. How do we know that? As Pastor wrote, history shows it and proves it. Okay? Let me read you something here about this power, because people say that, you know, oh, that was ancient Rome. But this Rome still exists today. It has authority. This is Roman law today. It says no code completely broke. It's talking about the Roman law now. The Roman law, the codes of the Roman law. No code completely broke with Roman tradition. Okay, so they admit it. No, none of the codes of law broke with the Roman tradition. Rather, the provisions of the Roman law were fitted into a more coherent system and expressed in the natural language of the nations. Okay? For this reason, knowledge of Roman law is indispensable to understand the legal systems of today. In other words, you've got to be able to understand Roman law, or you cannot understand civil laws. Thus, Roman law is often still a mandatory subject for law students. Let me put this up here for you. Can you see that? Is that readable? Okay. Okay, so it says, knowledge of Roman law is indispensable to understand the legal systems of today. Thus, Roman law is often still a mandatory subject for law students in civil law jurisdictions. So, you know, and you see it everywhere, because when you think about it, think about the terms that are used in law. Okay, it's all Roman terms that's still being used. As steps towards the unification of the private law in the member states of the European Union are being taken, the old Ius Communi, I don't know how that's pronounced, but anyway, which was the common basis of legal practice everywhere, that's worldwide, but allowed by many local variants, is seen by many as a model. Okay, and here's that word again, that it's actually a J or I. Remember, either one of them in Latin, it's the same letter. Okay, it's for Latin, it means common law, something that's called the law of the land in English. And in its historical meaning, it's commonly thought of as a combination of canon law and Roman law. Okay? Now, canon law is the body of laws and regulations made or adopted by the ecclesiastical authority or the church leadership for the government of the Christian organization and its members. It's the internal ecclesiastical law governing the Catholic Church, both Latin Rite and Eastern Catholic churches, the Eastern and the Oriental Orthodox churches, and the Anglican community of churches. Now, these are all groups that are out there that are supposedly Protestant, but these are the exact same ones that the Catholic Church has very close ties to. And you hear a lot about the Anglicans, because the Anglicans they're not Catholic, but at the same time they're being pulled back to the Catholic Church, and they're accepting the authority of the Pope once again. So the Catholic Church, remember, this is all the daughters that they're going after. But the way that such church law is legislated, interpreted, and at times educated varies widely among these three bodies of churches. Okay, some scholars believe that the term, when used in the context of the ecclesiastical courts of England, also meant that the law that is common to the universal church, as opposed to the constitutions or special customs or privileges of any provincial church. So in other words, this common law, okay, this Roman law is based upon the fact that it's canon law and Roman law, okay? So it's a mixture of church and state, which is what they say that they separated, in democracy. But of course they haven't, So it's one and the same. So it shows you that this horn is definitely a religious power, okay? Just as Pastor has brought out here, it's very prevalent that this power is still in effect today. It never has gone away. It's only been changed in a guise to try and disguise it for what it is, But you can't hide the truth. The truth is there. You just can't hide it. Now he goes on and he says the same governmental system, okay, it changes the laws. Now in Daniel 7, verses 23 to 25, this is where we find this information. He says, this is what he said. The fourth beast will be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which will be different from all other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth and tread it down and break it in pieces. Devour the whole earth. So this beast is going to have the power and authority to conquer and to conquer. Go out and conquer. And the 10 horns of this kingdom, or 10 kings, that will arise, and then another will arise after them, and he will be different from the first. And he will subdue 3 kings. And he will speak great words against Yahweh, and he will wear out, thus mentally attack and cause them to fall away, the saints of Yahweh, and think to change times. Okay, that's Yahweh's feast days and laws. And they would be given to his hand to a time and times and the dividing of times. Now, the word times, Strong's Hebrew Dictionary shows you that. Okay, it's number 2165, and it means the an appointed occasion or an appointed time. So it's not just talking about a time, but an appointed time, one that has been appointed. And of course, it's been appointed by Yahweh. Gesenius says that this word means it's used at the times of the feast days. Okay, so it's feast days. So we know that this is another clue that this is a religious power. This horn is a religious power. It's not just political power, but it's a religious power because it's dealing with changing the feast days, which has to do with religion, right? So it's religious power. The word speak Yesenia says this word speak is used for, it's used poetically for another word, debar. And of course, debar means to establish a word. And the word establish means to appoint laws. So again, we see that this word is dealing with laws. Now remember what we just read, how you have this Roman law consists of the Canaan law, which is the ecclesiastical or the Catholic Church, and it plainly says the universal church, okay, their laws, what they wanted. And this is why years ago, people bought their way into the popes. You know, it hadn't anything to do with religion. It had to do with power and authority. And they knew that the best way that you could have real power and real authority is if you had sway over the people's minds. If you could influence them in a way with what they believed, you had power over their minds. You could influence what you wanted them to believe in, and you had great authority and power. And they would pay their way into these things. One of the youngest popes was, I believe he was 20. He was either 20 or in his very early 21 or 22, something like in the early 20s. And of course, he lived a promiscuous life and stuff. And he actually ended up selling it to his uncle. And his uncle bought from it. And then he came back later and tried taking it away from him. And then they ended up kicking him out and so forth. But there's all sorts of stories about the different popes and stuff. But this is history. The Catholic Church even has these things written down about their own quote-unquote religious leaders who come from Peter the Pope. You know? And then the word words. That also means debar, or commands or laws. Now, the word against, where it says in this verse, the word against, when he says he would speak great words against Yahweh. The word against comes from the Hebrew root word zad. And the Hebrew tongue restored by Fabre d'Olivet on page 432 shows that this word expresses an idea of opposition. Okay, so there's an opposition that is there. Of course, this is the reason why they did that. You know, they wanted to oppose this power that was in authority already. They wanted to take over and put this influence upon the minds of the people and gather, and the thing is the Catholic Church has the greatest intelligence source that there is in the world, because they're subdivided throughout the entire world. You know, they're not just in Rome. When people think of the Catholic Church is just in Rome, that's the headquarters. Remember, that's where the Pope is at. But every nation, just like the United States, is divided up into 32 different provinces. Okay, and then you have all of the dioceses in there, which is composed of your different parishes, where you have your priests. Remember, when the people went to the priest, they told them their sins. They told them intimate details and stuff, and the priest asked them about certain things. So sometimes if people wanted to get over on somebody else, you know, if they had a grudge against them or whatever, all they had to do is go to the local parish priest and tell them something. And then before you know it, they would get something going there, and they would end up arresting the person and taking all of his possessions. And that's how the Catholic Church became so powerful, is they went out and they took what wasn't theirs. Now, if someone was rich and didn't pay their taxes, or if they were paying their taxes but they didn't tithe, so to speak, to give their money to the church, then they would just simply go in there and come up with some false charges, have him arrested, and the church would go in and take all of his property. And that's how they got all the stuff that they did. That's the reason why when the fightings were going on amongst the 12 tribes and the crusades were going on, and the Pope said, stop the fighting amongst yourself and join me so we can go in, and whatever we take over, whatever we get, you can divide amongst yourselves and you can have enough. And that's exactly what they did. They always took what wasn't theirs. But Daniel's prophecies here, okay, they were definitely inspired by the Creator himself, because there's no possible way that Daniel who lived in the days of the Babylonian Empire, could accurately predict on his own the things that are written there. You know, there's no way he could see the actions of another world-ruling empire, especially so far in advance of his own time. You know, Daniel himself wondered about these things. He was, it troubled him as we read. It troubled him about what was going to take place. Yet his prophecy showed that the Roman Catholic Church would establish many laws that are in opposition to Yahweh's laws. And these things have been fulfilled. This shows you fulfilled prophecy proves that there is a creator, because these things were prophesied before they ever took place. And you've got to believe prophecy or you're a fool, plain and simple. If we don't believe what's written, we are called fools. And a fool says that there is no Yahweh. And that's the definition of a fool. But the world today, it's a witness to the fact that the Roman Catholic Church changed his seventh-day Sabbath. You remember, these laws were in opposition to Yahweh, okay? And in this book, The Change of the Sabbath, you find a lot of documented proof about this. But I want you to remember the importance of the Sabbath, okay? The importance of the Sabbath is found in Exodus 31, verse 13, where Yahweh said, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, surely my Sabbath." Now remember, Leviticus 23 tells you about the weekly Sabbath, and it tells you about the feast day Sabbaths, okay? So Yahweh says, "My Sabbaths you shall keep, for it, the Sabbath day," keeping the Sabbath day holy, okay, is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, he says. It's a sign throughout generations, so that you may know that I am Yahweh. So if you don't keep the Sabbath day, you're not going to know Yahweh. You cannot understand and know who Yahweh is without keeping his Sabbath days. And that's a sign. He says it's a sign that you are my people and I am your heavenly Father. He says that you may know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies you and makes you holy, okay? Keeping the Sabbath day holy separates us. It sanctifies us. It separates us from the world, because the world doesn't keep the Sabbath day. The world keeps Sunday. The world keeps Friday, as the Muslims do. They keep these days, these other pagan holidays, instead of keeping the feast days of Yahweh, which are signs. So when we gather together, remember it says, don't forsake the gathering together of yourselves on the Sabbath day, because you make yourself holy before Yahweh. And remember, we're being made into Yahweh's image. And in order to be made into that image, into his likeness, we must become like Yahweh. Yahweh keeps his own law. He keeps his Sabbath day. You remember? He set that example when he made Adam. What did he do? He created everything. He created mankind. And then he told him about the very first day of his life. There he told him about the Sabbath day. And he said he rested on the Sabbath day. He didn't just kick back in his easy chair, you know. But he taught him about the Sabbath day. He showed him how to keep this day holy. And remember, he says, this is a sign throughout your generations that it will always be kept. So that's the extreme importance of keeping the Sabbath day and understanding what the Sabbath day is about and keeping it the way that Yahweh said to keep it. And this is what this beast did. It went in to conquer and to take away that understanding from the minds of the people. And remember, the Sabbath day was kept for a long time. It didn't just phase out. The way it got phased out of the people's minds is under the threat of death. So even in Constantine's time, the Sabbath day was still being kept. However, when he enforced this law that this is the day that you shall keep, this is the God you shall worship, he had something that he could bring the nations together, not the nations, but his empire together, and bring them together to worship one God on one day and have one religion throughout the whole Roman Empire. This is how Christianity spread. This is why it spread. It has nothing to do with the worship of Yahweh. You know, Christianity was invented to bring forth the power of the popes, because Constantine was a pope, remember, to have control over the people and bring their minds together into one single state, to get them off of the Sabbath day. Because they knew the importance of the Sabbath day. They knew what the Sabbath day meant. If the people understood these things, they would go and they would seek after Yahweh, and they would lose their power and authority among the people. So they did everything that they could to do away with these laws and to do away with the Sabbath day. Now in this book here, The Change of the Sabbath, the title says The Sabbath and the Law. He says, of what is the Sabbath commandment a part? And the answer is the law of Yahweh. See Exodus 20, verse 8 through 11, which tells you the Sabbath, the seventh day of the week is the Sabbath. And then it says the papal power acknowledges this act. It says, what power has claimed authority to change God's law? And the answer is the papacy. Okay? Note, it says, the Pope is of so great authority and power that he can modify, he can explain, or interpret even divine laws. The Pope can modify divine law, since his power is not of man, but of God. And he acts as viceregent, anyway, that means in place of God, upon earth. Translated, and that's translated from a book there. Okay, so the Pope is of such great authority. Remember, even today it speaks about the infallibility of the Pope. It doesn't mean that every word that the Pope says is infallible. However, when he's speaking as God, his word is infallible. You have to take it as being from God himself, is the teachings of the Catholic Church. And so you think about the power that it took to put in the minds of the people that here this man is, and this man speaks as God, and he has the great authority. Okay, and people worship the Pope. You know, they bow down to him. You know, when you greet the Pope, you have to bow down and kiss his ring. And he's got this huge ring. It's called the fisherman's ring. And it has a little picture of Peter, you know, who's the first Pope in a fishing boat, you know. But you bow down to him and you kiss that ring. That shows your homage, your subjection to him. And this is for anybody. I mean, you remember, dignitaries come before the Pope and bow down to the Pope, submitting to his authority over them, over his influence, his rule upon them. Remember, this all came from Samuel. When they rejected Yahweh as the king, then they began to fall into all these other things, and all of these religions began to form. And this is where the Catholic Church actually came from. They try and tell you that the church began with Jesus. You know, when Jesus was here on earth, Jesus Christ was his name, and he died, and he began Christianity by making Peter the first pope. Okay? Because the name Peter means rock. It don't mean rock, it means a little stone. Okay? The rock is Yahweh. And that's what Yeshua was talking about, that the house of Yahweh would be established upon the rock, upon the teachings of Yahweh as the rock. But they tried to make it that Christianity began with Peter's being the first pope, and from that time on it grew. The question is, what occurred to salvation before that time? There couldn't be any. There couldn't be any. No one could have known the Creator until that time, because this just started up at that time. But yet they'll go back and they'll talk about Abraham and stuff, and all of these different things. But they'll throw little tips of information here and there and so forth. But they never connect it all together, and they will never tell you the truth, because they'll never tell you how to have salvation. It's not part of their faith. And then he says, what part of the law of God has the papacy thought to change? Or what law of Yahweh has the papacy thought to change? And that is the fourth commandment, okay? This Sabbath day. And then it goes on to some other stuff. But we're going to have to stop here on we'll stop on page 9 so the priest next week can take off on page 10. But remember, the importance of the Sabbath day. It's so extremely important for us to understand that and to realize all the teachings that Pastor has put into it to try to get us to understand what the Sabbath day is about. It's an eternal appointment. We'll always have the Sabbath day. It will always be a day, no matter where we are in the universe. We'll always be able to come before Yahweh and keep the Sabbath day with Him. You know, and we'll always be learning on that day more and more, and we'll be fellowshipping. You think the Sabbath day is busy now? Wait till then. You know, and it's going to be an incredible time to go before the Creator of the universe and actually share the Sabbath day with Him. You know, that's going to be a holy time. You know? Praise Yahweh. Okay, if everybody go ahead and stand, we'll close. Almighty Heavenly Father Yahweh, this is Cohen Michael Hawkins, asking to come before you, seat of your last day's witness, Yisrayl Hawkins, and through your son, Yeshua Messiah, the high priest of your house, Father. As we come before you, we bless you and thank you for another day of life. We ask and pray, Father, you continue to help us as we reflect upon the things that your house teaches us, Father. We thank you for your great and awesome blessings of being alive in these last days, seeing these prophecies coming to pass, Father, and knowing and understanding who you are, Father, and the great love that you have for us and the great things that await us, Father, if we'll truly overcome. Help us, Father, to be strong throughout this week and do the things that you've commanded us to do, to be faithful unto you, Father, and be faithful to one another, to serve one another, and to show the love that you have shown and placed within our hearts, Father, so we can enjoy each and every moment of each and every day that you bless us with, Father. We thank you and praise you. We ask you to go with us in peace, and we ask these things in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah, Yahweh.